Call this committee of the whole meeting to order. Please rise for the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? Whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
Brenda, would you do the roll call, please?
Sure. President Klein-Jerome,
Here.
Vice President Postgen,
Here.
Director Barnes,
Here.
Director Hayes,
Here.
Director Potts,
Here.
Director Ward,
Here.
Director Beck. I believe Director Beck is absent. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now turn it over to the superintendent to introduce the Iowa Association of School Boards training.
Thank you. Tonight, we're very fortunate to have with us Harry Holligenthal and Tammy Drawball with us to kind of kick off our school year with the cadence that we have been using for the last couple of years to just review where we are and where we're going. So, Tammy, thank you so much for being here tonight. And Harry, thank you so much for joining us virtually from parts unknown. So I'll turn it over to you. Thanks, Tammy.
I just need to push. Thank you for inviting us back, friends. Oh, it's high tech. Push once and I let go. Love it. Harry and I are thrilled to be back amongst you all. You have a long-standing tradition and dedication in your own learning as a board together, and we certainly commend you for that. I would be remiss if I didn't remind you all how close you are to sealing up the team award again this year. So for your own learning, IASB provides an hour. Each hour that you provide for seat time of learning, you are earning an hour. Karen, you've blown away your necessary 15 hours to earn the individual award. And Kent P., you have blown away your number as well. And the rest of you are really close. When you have 4 or more, so the majority of your board earns their hours, your board team is recognized, and y'all are really close. So we'll make sure that you have an update on that. TJ also has an opportunity to earn his. And so I'm fully counting on you all to have the team award again this year, because I think you've had it 2 years in a row now. So I think, as the kids say, you've already started a streak. So you have to, just like they do in Snapchat. So now you've committed. So we're looking forward to that. Harry and I have a jam-packed night for you. And Harry, now that I've talked a little bit about the annual board award, your dedication to learning, we're going to spend some time tonight talking about some of the strategic work that you have been doing, how you're going to communicate that with your public. And we're going to also do some high level talking about boardsmanship. So, Harry, I think you're going to kick us off, though, with information flow and operating protocols. And everybody's got their workshop packet in front of them, which also has contact information for Harry and I. Harry, I'll let you take it away. And I think they're going to start on page 1, yes?
Muted. Let's try this again. All right. Now can you hear me?
We can hear you.
That sounds great. How many times does it take me to hit the mute and unmute button? Um, anyway, thank you, my friends. For most of you, maybe not Jake. So Jake, consider this another quick dip in the norms and operating protocols or procedures that the board landed on. Golly, 3-4 years ago. I've done some, maybe longer, done some tweaking with that, and we're treating this as just a quick tune-up. And so in a minute, when I'm quiet, I'll ask you to just review those 10 protocols and on page 1, and then items 6, 7, and 8, protocol 6, 7, and 8 are those norms. If you want to mark by those 3, they have the word continuums mentioned in there. And if you turn to page 3 in your packet, you'll see a diagram or a visual of those continuums. And those are really when we worked with you a few years ago to refine your norms or your protocols. We added these in as a quick visual, and they were intended as something to consider specifically when you are or thinking about making a board request. So those continuums can act as a lens or maybe a filter to just keep in mind as you make board requests. And then if you would turn to page 5 for a minute, because as you review these individually and with a partner, what we're really after is the question on page 5. When you think about your role in this upcoming school year, what are 1 or 2 of the operating protocols that you think might be especially important for the board to do its best work moving forward? Again, you've previously committed to all 10 of those protocols, but are there any in particular, a couple that you think might be especially important with the work you have to do this coming school year? So take a minute or two, and Tammy, help me regulate time, please, and just review them quickly, asking yourself, are there a couple of these that might be especially important this year? And then we'll have you talk with a partner and ask a couple of folks to share out loud. Okay, then if you would just pair up with somebody next to you and share for a couple minutes. Did you find a couple of them, one or two, that you think might be especially important or pertinent this coming school year, and why?
Do you think we do that? Don't you think we do that, or you think we need to focus more on doing it?
Well, my question is how's that information going to be provided? I guess the superintendent is going to decide that.
Well, I want to think about the Friday updates. Do you think too much is sent through the Friday updates, or not enough?
I think sometimes that there's things in Friday update that should be a discussion because it never gets discussed.
Right. It's just here's the information. And how are we going to decide which ones are going on Fridays and which ones aren't? Is that just up to TJ, or is that up to the agenda committee?
I would say the agenda committee, but some of that stuff is so last minute.
Yeah. I would say
Sometimes they have to request as a discussion item so that we can vote on it right away the next meeting. Because otherwise, it's supposed to be a discussion and then vote the following meeting. So I think that happens too many times too.
Yeah, well, it shows up in Fridays, and then sometimes it goes to discussion and then right to action all in one. Yeah.
Instead of a meeting apart.
Yeah. So really the question is, how are these, how are we determining?
A discussion item.
Yeah. And number 7, provide time for the superintendent and board to discuss board requests in relation to the information. We don't need to discuss it, board requests, except that agenda committee might just show up.
Okay,
We don't.
would like to just do a quick sampling from each pair and yeah, hear what percolated up to the top in your conversation. Karen and Kent, can we start with you, please?
What if I said no? No.
Then I'd probably be out of luck. I'd be scrambling to have Steve point the camera to somebody else.
Kent and I talked about maximizing the superintendent and board secretary communication with the board, the Friday updates. Sometimes we feel that what we're getting in the Friday updates really should come to the board as a discussion, and that by just giving us that information, we haven't had a chance to discuss it. But I don't know how we would decide which ones need to be discussion and which ones can just come as Friday reports. And then the provide time for the superintendent and board to discuss board requests in relation to the information continuum. Well, if I make a board request, somebody seconds it, and then it goes away for the agenda committee to decide when it's coming on the agenda, but we don't discuss it. Anything to add? So that's
And
what I came up with.
Okay, and I think that's a good example. Back to your first one for a minute. If that's something that with the Friday updates that you as a board team and superintendent see as ways that there might be ways to strengthen that process or clarify, then in your subsequent agenda planning time, put that on the hopper. And Karen and Kent, you'd visit with CJ and Brenda. And that can be a terrific opportunity to think about how to refine the process, and then be sure, obviously, bring that information back to the whole board if it needs discussion in terms of how to move forward. So, good.
I think one
Um,
of the things that,
yeah.
as an agenda planning team, that we did last time was Kent actually pulled up the Friday reports and looked what were the last Friday reports, and we have an actual Google Doc that we can pull up and say, are any of these things the agenda committee thinks should be discussion items, presentations, things of that nature.
Which helps make it real concrete, and it gives TJ or any superintendent in his role the opportunity to say, here's why I included it in the Friday update. Here was my intent. And then again, if it's an area where Karen, Kent, you feel, the board feels like this would merit some additional discussion, then you know voice that in, and you make some tweaks and changes in it. So good. Another couple, and my view of the camera is only at the front of the table. So if another board member would jump in and share a quick summary of a couple things you and your partner talked about, that would be great.
Hello, Harry.
Yep. Hi, Linda and Bruce. Thank you.
Bruce and I, we selected number 9 for the simple reason with all the construction that we have, with the schedule changing, with the sixth graders, that we'll have a lot of questions that'll be coming up. And it would be nice if we all are on the same pages when we're relaying this information to the community.
Yeah, and you can never have enough communication around that, and that continual revisiting and synthesizing what are the collective big ideas makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Linda and Bruce. And that should leave Jake and Kent, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Harry. And Jake and I also spent a little bit of time on number 9, just given this past year and the amount of community input that we received both in meetings and outside of meetings, and anticipating questions relative to schedule will most likely continue. I think the added pressures relative to capital improvements, timeline, budget, all of those sorts of things. I appreciate the emphasis on policy and procedure relative to that. So Jake and I spent some time on that too.
Great. And I think this is always a good timely moment to just remind ourselves that not the only, but one of the key methods as a board, one of the key vehicles you have for communicating with the public and affirming what's important and why is your board meetings and your committee of the whole meetings. That's a key vehicle. Again, it's not your only one, but it's an important piece to be able to relay and reaffirm that info. TJ or Brenda, is there anything else you would add to the board comments about the norms or operating protocols? And if not, we'll slide on to our next activity.
I think our board members said it very well. I think there's also some celebrations in here. I think our board members forward community questions on to us. I think our board members do a good job of really considering when making a board request. I think our board, like a lot of these things are good celebrations for me, honestly. You know, our board meetings, they focus on, we stay focused on the agenda. Our board's not afraid to stay for 3 hours if they need to, or conduct a business meeting if necessary. So some of those are celebrations. I think some of them are things that you can never be perfect at, you know, like the no surprises, make sure that we give information. We're constantly trying to improve in that area, both myself and communication going both ways. So that's something I'm constantly trying to work on.
And I think a parting or additional comment I wanted to share is, which I probably should have said this 15 minutes ago, is this is just a quick tune-up. This is when I think back, my observation to 4 or 5 years ago, where you were operating, where the board was operating at that point, and that really helped give birth to these protocols compared to where you are now. It's a joy to sit back and watch how you operate as a leadership team now. And that the whole notion of a tune-up is not because there's a particular thing that needs to be fixed here, but just it's good practice to come back each year a time or two, like number 10 says, review these a couple times a year. And as new board members are elected, thanks Jake for being appointed, so that gave us another occasion to revisit these because they are a cornerstone of effective boardsmanship. So with that, Tammy's going to move us on to some additional thoughts, really, which will come from you on effective boardsmanship.
Thanks, Harry. We're going to move ahead to page 7, and I would like you all to spend just a little bit of time thinking about boardsmanship. And when I use the term boardsmanship, I'm thinking about both the work you each do around the table. I'm thinking about the work you might even do away from the table, and how do you function together as a team. So there are multiple pieces to that, but it really, when we think of boardsmanship, we think of skills, we think of behaviors, principles, and ethical decisions that you all are faced to make. There's 2 questions that I would like you to give some thought to, and then it'll come as a complete surprise. We're going to have you share out with each other. No one laughed, Harry. So there's 2 questions on page 7. The first one is, imagine you're speaking with someone from the community, and they want to understand what you believe are a couple of the most important elements of board effectiveness. What would you tell them? And question number 2 is, what do you believe is the relationship between your board's effectiveness and those operating protocols that you just spent a little bit of time in? And I'm going to give you just a couple minutes to jot some notes to yourself, and then you're going to share with an elbow partner. I'm going to have you finish up your thought, and then I sort of fibbed a little because I'm not going to have you share with an elbow partner. I'm going to have you get up and go talk to someone you're not sitting next to and share with them. It's like volleyball. If you all there you go. Have you had a chance to share your answers with both questions with your partner? No one's saying no. Jake, thank you. Jake shook his head yes. All right. Who wants to share out what you talked about in your pair group?
Yeah, thank you. For question one, two most important elements. We talked about relationships with the community, with the staff, with the superintendent, being able to trust each other and understand that we're all here for the same purpose, essentially. And I think that trust element was big for both of us as we were going through that question. And then another thing is for me was investment. So I have kids in the district. I think it's important for community members to understand that we're invested in the success of this district. It's not a passing hobby here. This is something that we want to see succeed. And I think that when they understand that, and then they look at our decisions, they see that hey, we're invested in this too. So.
Absolutely, those are great answers. Who wants to share next for question number one? I'm coming back for question number two.
Well, before Linda and I even started talking, we both had written down transparency. So again, I think that's so important as a board to, whatever we are working on, we have to be very transparent. For the most part, I think we've done that, but I think there's still a lot of room for improvement. For a second thing, and there's a lot that can fall under this, but student achievement, that should be I guess our number one goal, but there is so many things that fall under student achievement that that's kind of a wide open area. And then, let's see, did you want number two now, or?
I'm going to ask you to hold on to number two. I'm going to touch on your transparency, which is a beautiful answer. Do you ever find yourself thinking, oh, yeah, we already talked about that, whatever that topic is, and so then you move on to talk about your next topic, but maybe that night's audience didn't hear that first conversation that you had, and feeling like, well, the board didn't talk about that, when you all may have spent hours talking about it a different night, or you may feel like, we've talked about this for 3 meetings, do we have to talk about it again? Do you ever have that happen? I see some heads nodding and I see some smiles. And that does not mean you are not being transparent at all, by the way. But if you ever get to that place where you think, did we just have this conversation? I would also say I think that is normal and okay to have happen as well. It may take having some of those what you all feel like, we've already talked about this, but having that conversation again in the public so the public gets to hear that conversation. Karen, I'm not helping you on the 3-hour meeting thing. I'm really sorry. All right, I'm going to shift over to the third team. Question number one.
We also said transparent, or I did. Kent had some really good ask difficult questions and eyes in, hands out. I think that says it all.
Say that one more time.
Eyes in, hands out. Don't get in the weeds kind of thing.
I might borrow that without guilt. Can I, Kent?
Absolutely.
I like that. So y'all had some similarities in some of the things you said, which is not surprising to me at all. How about question number two? How about if we go in reverse order? What did you have for question number two?
We talked about the protocols reinforce the almost requirement that we have a shared agenda rather than any individual personal agendas, that those 10 protocols reinforce that we've got to function as a team without any solo practitioners, which I think is really helpful in providing guidance to the board. They also provide a really helpful reminder that our job is oversight, but not to burden the administration with countless requests and basically subject them into paralysis of information requests.
Those are beautiful. I think if I'm going in reverse order, I volley to the other side of the room, friends. We're looking for your answer to question number 2.
We talked about like the protocols are just kind of a roadmap for the board to follow.
Beautiful. And team number 3.
We kind of thought, the protocols create our effectiveness and our efficiency and keep us in the right cadence to move things forward. So they're, directly related to the effectiveness and the protocols.
You also all had a lot of similar answers on question number 2, right? Which is beautiful. And I love, Kent, I love it's a roadmap to where you're going, to where you've been as well. And so I love it that you all use that analogy. Well, as we step away from boardsmanship and thinking about how you work together, and by the way, I didn't, doing these things when you're here at the table together, but also keeping those protocols in mind when you're not at the table together, that you're still thinking about, what do our protocols say about X? I want to shift gears just a little bit. Harry, did you have anything you wanted to add on thoughts on boardsmanship?
No, good. We're good. You're good. Thank you.
Okay. I was just going to say you were getting a sandwich or something. That wasn't very fair, was it? Let's talk about conflict of interest a little bit. This one isn't always as much fun, but I think it's an important one that you have just a little bit of time to talk about. There are some things from conflict of interest that the law helps you clearly define. Can anybody think of what could be perceived as a conflict of interest for you as a board member, but the law has defined that you are not allowed to do, or over a certain dollar amount? Linda.
I'm taking monetary gifts.
Monetary gifts would definitely be one. How about if you wanted to be a sub in your district, or you wanted to be a sub bus driver in your district, or you wanted to be a para? What does the law tell you about how much you can earn in your own district when you're sitting on that board? Are there any guidelines in place? There are. So the law tells you, and through the years, the threshold has been increased. A lot of years ago, when I was, as I like to say, a baby board member, I think the threshold was something like $10,000. It was pretty low. So it said if you're sitting on your local board and you want to sub in your district, or you want to do something in your district, you cannot make over X amount of dollars, that it was a conflict of interest. When it became harder to find substitute teachers, when it became harder to find bus drivers, and not that all positions are important, but those two come to the top of mind, that dollar amount was increased. TJ, I'm going to look at you and completely put you on the spot. I think it's $25,000. It might be, but there is a law that says here's what the dollar amount is. And it's meant to protect you as a board member, and it also protects the district so you don't find yourself in that place of conflict of interest. But there can be other things that happen that aren't maybe as straightforward, or what I like to say, they can be perceived conflicts of interest. I'm going to share a couple that I went through every year as a board member. One of them was I had a mother-in-law who worked in food service. So each year, when we would renew the contract for food service, any guesses what I did when they came to vote? I didn't vote. And I said, why? I shared. Small community, kind of a unique last name. People would put that together. Did I get direct impact from her employment? I did not. But I felt it could be a perceived conflict of interest. The law would not have said that's a conflict of interest, but I said at the board table, I'm not voting because I have a family member that this impacts. I watched some other board members who might have had a spouse who had a contract and did the same thing, but they shared their why. So it wasn't just I'm not voting no, but I'm going to pull myself out of the situation so there's not a perceived conflict in the community. At the time I was on my local board, I also worked for an office furniture manufacturer who happened to provide, who we purchased all of our seating and training equipment from, for lack of a better word. And every year in our annual audit, it was called out as a potential conflict of interest because I worked for the company of where we were purchasing where we purchased products from. It was not meant to be a negative, but the auditor always said, but we want to make sure that the public is aware that we recognize that. I always looked ahead to page whatever it was, 46, to make sure I was actually listed. And there were a couple other individuals through the years, similar situation. So legally, it was not a conflict of interest, but the auditor said, let's make sure we put that in writing in your yearly audit. So good for the public when you think about that transparency piece, right? And then to be able to talk about that and say, here's why we're voting the way we are, here's why we're doing what we're doing. But it's not always easy. It's not always easy to know. There can be times where you think, I don't know, should it be a conflict of interest? How do I know? So here's what I'd like you to do. On page 9, you have some thoughts on conflict of interest, and there's 3 questions there. I'd like you to take a minute and just jot some notes to yourself in answering those questions. What does it mean to you, a conflict of interest? The second one is, what do board members need to consider? How do you self-monitor that level of engagement and know, is there a perceived conflict of interest? And the third one is, if you're uncertain whether or not it's a conflict of interest, who do you ask? Who do you seek advice from? Are you ready to share with your partner? All right. Share with who you're sitting next to, and then you know what's going to happen next. Harry and I are going to do our round robin and let you share out. I'm practicing my teacher wait time and I'm not very good at it. That's why I keep practicing. Did you get a chance to talk through all 3 questions with your partner? Okay. What does a conflict of interest mean to you? You can all answer if you want, but even just a couple of answers. What did you talk about with your partner?
We said basically anything that crosses the line with ethics, anything that you gain monetary value from.
It's a great answer, Linda, and the law is pretty clear about that. If you or someone directly in your household is going to gain from whatever that decision is, that is the line in the sand on conflict of interest. What about a perceived conflict of interest? That wasn't one of the questions, but what would you define as a perceived conflict of interest?
I would perceive conflict of interest would be if some organization you're associated with or some group that you're associated with is involved in working in the district for the district, getting bids from the district, that could be a perceived conflict of interest.
Okay, so even if I'm volunteering for a group that somehow is, or I'm doing something, I'm connected with a group who's coming in and maybe putting in a bid to work with the district, or
Right.
that I have a connection with.
Yeah, I would think that could be a perceived conflict.
Okay. It could be, especially when your neighbor knows that you and the owner are besties, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you're seen every week together at the football game, and clearly you're gonna help vote for whatever they want, right? When that's not the case, but that could be that perceived conflict of interest. Have any of you found yourself in a position of conflict of interest where you've had to say, I'm not voting? Linda, you were quick to say yes. Are you comfortable sharing?
I'm sure the whole world knows by now anyway, but with the when the district sold the Lincoln building, that was on the front page of the newspaper for quite some time. And the fact that I worked for the organization that purchased the building, even though I didn't vote, that was a huge issue. And there's still one lady that'll call me at least once a year to remind me about that.
And that's hard. That is a hard situation to go through alone, by the way, closing buildings. And then to be, I'm employed by, it just so happens, the company that's really hard. And yet we don't always get to sometimes pick the things that our employer does. So that's a hard one. And especially when you say, to some degree, you're still living it or reminded of it. Okay? I like when there's smaller conflicts of interest that aren't so sticky. That's way bigger, my friend, than any example I can offer. Okay? What does a board member need to consider? Or what do you need to self-monitor? What did you talk about for question number 2? Self-monitor your level of engagement if there is a conflict of interest or a perceived conflict of interest. What do you need to think about at the board table when that vote comes? Or what do you need to think about at the board table when that conversation starts? And you think to yourself, yeah, this could definitely be a perceived conflict of interest.
Well, I would guess transparency with board as well as the administration and the public. I mean, just being straightforward if there is a potential or perceived conflict of interest.
And Kent, I'm going to guess that's going to be one of those times you might say it 4 times at the board table at 4 different meetings. Just because you never know who may or may not be listening during that meeting, that it's okay to say, to remind your board team, hey, I'm not going to partake in this discussion, not because I'm not interested, but here's the gig. This may be a perceived conflict of interest. How about number 3?
Jamie, I think one more thing on number 2 is your written communication, if you're going back and forth asking questions, is all foiable. So just something to keep in when it mean a conflict of interest is a conflict of interest. So if there just I think sometimes we forget that everything that we write down, do, or say that is recorded into a record is foiable. So it's just something to keep in mind.
TJ, that's a great reminder. We probably should have, Harry and I should have thought to put that in just even in good boardsmanship in general. But it's a really good reminder. When the public sends you a document, it's now public knowledge. When you respond, it's now a public document. So no matter what the topic, no matter what that is, and yeah, if there's already maybe a perceived conflict of interest and now you have some email banter back and forth about that, it's a public record. As hard as that is, that is how that works. That's a great reminder. So what about number 3? If you're not certain, maybe it's a conflict of interest, maybe it's not, who do you ask?
I had a niece's husband going to get hired as a para, and I perceived it as kind of a conflict. I reached out to Brenda and said, "Is this, what do I do?" And she told me how to handle it.
Beautiful. Who's another good person to reach out to?
ISB. When I had my situation, I reached out to Siobhan.
If I had like a candy bar, I would share it with you right now, Linda. That's a beautiful answer. That was not the answer I was expecting. We are happy, though, to help talk you through any of those situations. It's never any phone call that I get that starts with, "I hate to bother you," or "This might be a dumb question." We start the conversation all over because neither are true. It's never a bother, and there's not a dumb question. What's another really good resource if you're not sure if it's a conflict of interest? He's sitting in the room.
I ask all my questions to TJ.
Beautiful. Yes. So you've already said Brenda's a good resource. Ask TJ, because here's the other piece. It's a beautiful thing in the world of no surprises that you also share with TJ, "Hey, here's why I feel like this is a perceived conflict of interest." Even if you say, "I'm not going to vote and here's why," he knows that ahead of time versus being surprised at the table. So he's a great resource. If you run through all of those options and no one is 100% clear, there's another beautiful, I'm going to call it a phone a friend option. Who's another great resource? I'll give you a hint. It's probably not a free phone call. Legal counsel. If you're ever unsure, legal counsel can help. If TJ says, "I don't know, I'm going to run that past legal counsel," they will help guide you. I think it's also okay to say, if you found yourself in a position where you feel like it was a conflict of interest, you might be concerned about what the public would think. TJ says, no, I think it's okay. I'll run it by legal counsel, but I think it's okay. It's also okay to say out loud at a board meeting, "I had a concern. I wasn't sure. This felt like it could be a conflict of interest. We've consulted with our legal counsel. TJ has assured me it's not, and I will cast my vote just like my peers do tonight." That's okay. That's also a beautiful thing to say. It also tells your public that you're taking every vote incredibly seriously, so much so that we're running through these paces to make sure that it's the right thing.
Recognizing that you are not legal counsel, how important is the direct financial, personal, or business benefit when it comes to conflict of interest? Jake and I both have students in the district right now. A capital investment in a new facility where Jake's kids are, where my kids are, that's part of service to 15,000 students who we serve, rather than an individual student being served. So how important is the direct?
According to what the law says, very important. And an attorney I am not, Kent, you're spot on, so thank you for that. I would venture to guess there have been hundreds of thousands of parents through the years that have sat in your seats. I can remember the fine arts receiving an incredible gift through the district. And I, at the time, had a child who eat, breathed, lived, drank, slept, all the things, fine arts, right? Was absolutely going to be a recipient. But so were X number of other students. And I was careful in the conversations that I might have, so that thinking about what does that look like. But for those of you that don't have children in the district any longer, you're still paying taxes in the district. You need every single student in the Davenport Community School District to be successful, right? Because they're part of your community, because it's part of the responsibility and the oath that you took. So Kent, I love that question, but that one would not keep me up at night. Beautiful question. That's a fair point as well. So the statement was, by the time whatever the project, the thing is, right, your student might have moved on. So beautiful conversation around conflict of interest. Does anybody have anything else that they want to add?
I just wanted to underscore two things, Tammy, that have popped up. One is how helpful it is when a board member briefly explains the why. And I'm by that, I don't mean that if my daughter's a staff member in the district or is being considered for employment, I don't have to go into detail about, well, my oldest daughter, blah, blah, blah. But if I say I have a family member who is interested or up for approval for this position, that's adequate. But I think that to describe the why is such a key piece, and I find myself thinking it's not only helpful to your public and staff, but it really is to the whole board superintendent team, because the other 6 board members and TJ leave knowing, and they can affirm if somebody catches them at the grocery store at a ball game and says, why didn't board member Tammy vote last week? They can say, because she described concern about a family member who was up for employment, or fill in the blank, whatever it is. So I think the why and how that can benefit the rest of the board superintendent team. So thanks.
Thanks, Harry. Anything else anybody wants to add? Harry, I think you're going to tee us up for Sarah, who is like ready to take center stage.
I sure am. And Sarah, you and Tammy just have to give me the look if it takes longer than 30 seconds or a minute here. So I recall back as Tammy and I were preparing for tonight, your board leadership and superintendent started talking weeks and months ago about the next steps for the strategic direction that the district is and will be taking, and we made a decision in the spring to put it on tonight's agenda. It seems like it's a real fitting place, and what's behind that is what we hope and anticipate will come after tonight's learning and conversation time is what Tammy and I describe as a plan on a page. And the idea would be that a plan on a page that describes, it might be a visual, etc., memes, who knows what it will end up looking like, but that it will allow you as a board superintendent team to concisely communicate about the big areas of work that the district's engaged in and the why, whether you're talking with community members, staff, each other. And so, again, what we envision after Sarah and TJ do a whirlwind tour here about the big areas of work underway and what's planned to help build momentum around those, know that in the back of your mind that your feedback, your comments, your learning needs will help fuel what this plan on a page, your strategic direction, ultimately looks like, and what's the most concise way that we can package that to share with others. So with that, Sarah and TJ, they're going to walk us through a one bucket or area at a time and tie that together with goals and priorities and help paint that picture of the best forecast about their strategic planning or strategic direction.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Harry. I kind of want to give us a little bit of where have we been and then hand it over to Sarah to where are we going in the future. How 5 years ago, we really wanted our brand to come alive. And so right at the time we were doing growing excellence, the academics, the athletics, and the arts for every child. We really wanted our comprehensive school improvement plan to come alive, not just be a document we put on the shelf. So we created the Growing Excellence Plan, the district-wide Growing Excellence plan that's around behavior, social emotional graduation, every goal that we have inside of our district. Our buildings then created Growing Excellence plans that are attached to the district Growing Excellence Plan. At the same time, we were revamping the evaluation system for the superintendent 3 times a year, and we created these 4 pillars for us that were important to us that encompass every major facet of the Growing Excellent Comprehensive School Improvement Plan. These 4 pillars, we have really grounded ourselves in them. I'm evaluated on these pillars. I'm saying that on purpose, kind of an alley-oop to you, Sarah. These 4 areas with key indicators, and Harry and Lou typically at the end of every year, we bring these back out from my evaluation. The things that we said are the important things moving forward. So we have our growing excellence plans. We have our board goals that are at the very top. The growing excellence plan feed into that, and then our building plans are attached to that. Meanwhile, we realized it was time to put our foot on the gas with our long-range facility plan. So we started surveying the community. What does the community want? We went through a very extensive plan where we are today, where we're getting ready to approve the last phase of that plan August 3rd or August 11th. That would have been yesterday, Bruce. Sorry about that. Then we have our resource management component of this. We have a really well high functioning team that look at our resources. They look at KPIs. Are we getting our buildings what they need? And then we have the portrait of a graduate that kind of goes into the community and what is it our community and stakeholders want from our school district. So organically, we are strategically acting. The board leadership, when we pitched the idea, most districts get on a 3 to 5 year strategic planning cycle, and they survey their community. They ensure that the board goals are driving every one of these plans, which is exactly what's occurring. We seek input from the community, which is exactly what's occurring. But we do not have that in a strategic plan, in a beautiful format on a 1 page. So tonight, our goal is to get Sarah enough information, what's important, what's not important to us, to where her team can create a 1-pager, a plan on a page, synthesize our strategic plan, which will allow us to talk about it, hold it accountable, and be able to move forward. This will the second goal is this will put us on a cadence, and it's going to fit very nicely to where 3 to maybe 5 years from now, it'll be time to redo our strategic plan. It'll be time to review our portrait of a graduate. It'll be time to, once we do this second round of long-range facility, it'll be a really good time to do another strategic plan. Survey our community 1 time about the things that they want. Kind of get us on a cadence with our community and with all of these really important pillars. The one thing that I want to say tonight is the way that our goals are set up, our long-term goals with our key indicators. Tonight, we're going to propose that we combine a couple of them and maybe add one. The portrait of a graduate really kind of speaks to this group, speaks to the community, and we don't have anything on here about community engagement, whether it be grants, internal, external stakeholders, alumni, which I think is a really important component of it. So just what does that community engagement look like from a district-wide standpoint? So we're going to pause on these goals like Harry and Tammy usually lead us to and get consensus around those and move over toward the strategic part, because those pillars in our strategic plan will be the exact same thing that the board has set as our really critical components, our long-term goals and our key indicators. So Sarah, that's where we sit today, and I think you're going to take us on a little bit of a journey through kind of synthesizing what we've got down here today.
Absolutely. So TJ really kind of hammered home the first couple of slides in our presentation, so I will not belabor the point. But Brenda, if you can skip to the next one. On the left-hand side, you see some of the current plans that we have enacted. So our body of work as a district is very large, and we still have last year's board and superintendent long-term goals printed in the packet that Tammy provided for you, and we will reference back to them. But we have all of these other plans, as TJ was talking about, that are currently making up the totality of our body of work. And so to be able to bring all of these plans into alignment under strategic pillars that can really focus our work going forward, I think is going to be very helpful. Not just for direction setting from the board, but then on the back end, as we have feedback loops both to our internal and external audiences. We want to be able to convey to our community what we are doing as a district. And when we have this plan over here, and we can tell you the progress we're making on our board goals and the progress we're making on our growing excellence goals. And have we told you about the buildings we're building yet? Let me tell you about those. But also we have businesses coming in with Portrait of a Graduate. And that's a lot, right? And so we want to make sure that we can synthesize this down and encapsulate all the work that's being done. We're not removing any of the work. We're trying to format it in a way that aligns all of our priorities together, because we want to be able to communicate this clearly internally to our staff. We want this to help drive decision making and really prioritize the work that we're doing. You can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So what we are proposing is, you will see the four in italics. These are the 4 board goal areas from last year. So enhance student learning, increase access and success for all students experience a safe learning environment, and foster the innovative use of finances, facilities, and staff. We would, again, looking at all of those plans and knowing that we need to potentially broaden the scope of our strategic pillars, are suggesting the following 4 buckets. Academic success, which would align with the board goal of enhancing student learning. Student supports, which would align with 2 of the board goals, increasing access and success for students, and then a safe learning environment. And then effective resource management, which is the innovative use of finance, facilities, and staff. But then, as TJ was talking about, we are positioned well as a district to really go deeper in terms of our relationship building with our community, how we engage our community, how we keep them abreast of the things that are going on, how we are even marketing our district to try and get students back into our district. We have a lot of really exciting things on the horizon in terms of community engagement, and none of our plans really encapsulate that body of work either. And so we would offer that as a 4th strategic pillar to look at. Can you go to the next slide? So the first one we want to touch on and get your feedback on. So you will see, if you turn to page 15 in your packet that Tammy gave you, we're going to go through these 4 strategic pillars. I will stop at the end of each one, and we will have some feedback questions to solicit your feedback from them to make sure that we are encapsulating the priorities of this body. And then also encapsulating the tactics and the strategies that we are then implementing from a staff perspective to reach the goals that you guys have set out for us. So under the first strategic area, we have academic success. And as TJ was sharing, if you can go to the next slide, our Growing Excellence Plan has five very defined goals. And so I want to keep those at the forefront as well, because from a staff perspective, those 5 goals drive a lot of the conversation of our staff and our day-to-day work. So I want to keep those Growing Excellence goals on the forefront of this conversation as well, because again, they are not set apart from each other, right? They really are pushing towards the same goals. So you can see the 3 goals 1, 2, and 5 align with this focus area. Give you a second to look through those. And then in terms of our focus areas, our tactics, what we're actually doing to implement things that are going to help us reach these goals, this is the current body of work in our focus area around academic success. Again, it's not the totality, but these are the high leverage action items that we are utilizing in the district to try and move us towards these goals.
These are also the feedback received from the school board during my evaluation that feed into our strategic goals as well. Yep. So during that feedback session, as for example, you can see increased access to preschool. That was one of the feedback components that I received during my evaluation. And so those are also incorporated, yes, and are directly related to our Growing Excellence Plan, yep, as well.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. So high quality curriculum implementation. We are in the midst of implementing a lot of new curriculum, rolling that out and making sure that it's implemented with fidelity and then continued on with fidelity. Improving Tier 1 instructional practices, which also includes implementing PLCs, coaching models, and middle school teaming throughout our buildings. We want to make sure that those are rolled out systemically throughout our organization, that there's parity across buildings as we're implementing these structures to ensure that our Tier 1 instructional practices are wonderful and great for our students. We know that quality Tier 1 instructional practices is one of our biggest leverage points in terms of moving the data in our goals that are outlined in our Growing Excellence Plan. Implementing the new high school schedule, we will begin that this fall. And then again, increasing access to preschool. So again, if you think about the goals that you as a board have outlined, those strategic pillars, those focus areas, those goals that you guys have outlined, coupled with the Growing Excellence goals in our Growing Excellence Plan, then translating those into what are our high leverage action items, our tactics that we can help deploy over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, because none of these are a 1-year check the box and we're done. These are long-term things. So having that feedback, I would now like, Tammy and I would like your feedback in terms of, are these, these goals, are these the data points that you guys want to continue to push towards, right? And have us track? Are there additional data points? And then from a high leverage focus area, strategic focus area, is there anything else that is hanging out there that we did not incorporate into this, given the feedback of all of your plans?
So, thanks. First of all, good stuff. My first question is, would the date for achievement be changed based on this conversation, and to what? Since June 2026 is just a year away, and if I'm understanding that the update to any sort of strategic direction would be 3 to 5 years. So that's one question. My second, I don't know if it's a question or a piece of feedback. It would seem to me, given the adoption of portrait of graduate work and the changes that we've made to graduation requirements to try to help students who are close to the finish line but not at the finish line actually earn a high school diploma. It would seem to me that piece of data is missing. That would seem to be an important measurement of academic success, is the high school graduation rate for the district. So others might disagree, but it seems like we've made a lot of moves in that direction in the last 2 years.
And I think number 5 is a different way of looking at exactly what you're talking about, right? When we started this goal, it was just that 100% of 9th grade students would earn 6.5 credits because they knew if they did that, they'd be on track to graduate, right? And then now we're bringing in 10th grade, right? Now, next year, we'll bring in 11th grade. And so I agree with you. I think that that's an excellent data point to track and is a little bit different than number 5, but the heart of them, I think, is the same in terms of focusing on graduation rates.
The other piece of feedback, the framework I think works. And again, with due respect to eyes in, hands out, it'd be great to have something a little snappier than academic success or academic achievement. That feels beige to me.
I thought you were going to say boring.
No, beige
Yeah.
to me.
Okay. Other feedback.
I do have a question. Okay, so I'm looking at the handouts. You've got the goals. They don't mention anything on these, and I realize they aren't ours. There's no numbers. There's no, 80%, 66%. It's kind of a little short paragraph about what the plan is, which honestly I prefer than putting all that into this one sheet of paper.
You're talking about the action steps. This page, is that what you're referring to?
Pillars, any of it.
So you like the descriptive nature of it?
I do.
Okay.
Versus the numbers on there.
Linda, did you have something you were going to add?
I did. Number 1, and then on the focus areas, improved tier 1 instructional practices. We had a conversation, well, not too long ago, about the how the students in the states were doing, and I have looked at it for the most part as a negative by how low our scores were, but one of the student board members pointed out that maybe the kids are just checking boxes. And I'm wondering if there could be some training or some focus placed to the students that this is just not a check the box. This, is statewide, and it's important as to how we're succeeding in the state, just to make it clear that we're not just wanting to finish these tests. We want to do our best in the tests.
Yeah. I remember our student board members shared a lot about that during one of our meetings this spring. They were. I don't think they realized the ramifications of, Yep, absolutely.
I have a question, and maybe this is information we already have, but what happened to 3 and 4? Have we achieved those goals?
Nope, they are tied to another strategic pillar
Got it.
area. So we will get to those under other pillar areas.
Thank
That's a great question. Any other feedback on this one? Okay, then we will move to our second.
Before you move on, I would like to ask the board on page 15. So this is your document that you have used now for 4 years-ish. And so Harry and I felt it was important not to create another tool for you, but bring your document back. I'm not asking you to answer all 8 questions, but I would like you to focus on question number 7, which is in bold. And that question is, based on this content that Sarah just shared around academic success, and what you've just learned? And I know it was high level, but what are 2 or 3 key ideas that you have heard that you wish every community member knew? So when you look at this, I'm going to tell you, if I were in your shoes and I walked out of here, I would be telling everybody that I saw at the grocery store, we are working hard on increasing access to preschool. Because one, I just love that. It resonates with me. And I would be so excited to tell people about that. What's the piece? What's the nugget or 2 out of what Sarah just shared that you would say, I wish every community member knew this? And you can just jot a couple of notes to yourself.
In terms of the verbiage we're using. Yep.
Curriculum that has higher expectations for kids to perform at the advanced and proficient levels in the products they produce, yes, people will get that.
Mm-hmm.
They appreciate that.
Yep. And by the way, they probably need the PLCs to make it happen, right?
I agree, Bruce. I turn that into like forward facing. If someone, number one thing we heard is like you gotta revamp your middle school. So that's exactly what we did. We added more staff to the middle schools. We basically surrounded a team around a whole grade level, and now if something's going on and someone has a good relationship with that kid now goes to that teacher to get a little extra help, and that teaming process really resonates. They don't, like you said, they don't know what PLC is, they don't know what the coaching and training, but they understand like, oh, my kid's a part of a house or a part of a team that is never going to be able to slip through the cracks. That's the goal of it. That one would be easy to brag about and something that would make people resonate. Paired with a brand new school.
Middle school parents will get that. Yeah.
Well, and this,
but John Q. Public just thinks middle school kids are just like, oh my God.
Well, and we're gonna
all by themselves, away from everybody.
Oh, and we will be communicating this out in different forms and fashions, right? Because you are correct. This is all education jargon up here, right? Mm-hmm. Like I would, had I not worked for the district, I would not know what a PLC was. I wouldn't know what Tier 1 instructional practices are, right? Like this is incredibly
CKLA and
oh yeah, like aside from increased access to preschool and high quality curriculum, yeah, you are incredibly correct. This is more like this right here is more for our internal work plans, right? These are the things that we're working towards. These are the things that we understand. As we're communicating this out with our community, you are 100% correct. These are not the things we're going to say. Yep, which goes back to what Karen was saying too. When you look at this example that I printed off from you from Dubuque, and they have a very robust strategic planning process that they have done every 5 years for a very long time. And so I think they do this well, and this is a model that we can look at. But when this is to Karen's point, when you look at their plan, I mean, this is very easy to understand. You don't have to be a teacher to understand this. You don't have to be an administrator to understand this. All parents, all community members can understand what it is they're trying to do and where they're trying to go. And so the end external facing document absolutely needs to be accessible to our entire community in terms of a collective understanding of where we're trying to go. I absolutely agree with that.
Well, and I think like improve instructional practices with high quality curriculum implementation. You combine the first two, get rid of that tier one, get rid of that CKLA, HMH, you know, things that people would understand that. Sometimes people within this district send things and I'm like, I don't know what those initials mean, or I did, or but now I don't, or it's. And I taught for 32 years. They need to spell it out.
I think probably the reality, and we probably are getting a little bit sidetracked. These are the buckets of sweat. I mean, this is the list, and this list is going to change in 3 years. It's going to change dramatically in 5 years. What we've got to get right is what we say about the externally facing, because we're going to choose a different action in this in order to support that goal. And I wouldn't get too hung up on the buckets of sweat of all of the many things that we're going to do to try to maximize student academic achievement.
I think having time to practice your messaging will be most important, because I hear each of you kind of narrowing in on some different things. And Bruce, I agree. I would not go to the grocery store and stop people and tell them about PLC and coaching. But I would say something like, these are my words, I'm not in your district, right? But our district is making a significant investment in our staff, because we know that will directly impact this incredible new curriculum that we're delivering, right? That probably could be meaningful. But for you all to have just a little bit of time talking about the buckets of sweat, Kent, I'm going to have to start paying you for all the things I'm going to take away. But what resonates with you all collectively and what makes sense in your district will be really important. So even just taking time to talk through, how will you say that? How does that resonate with somebody?
So I think we're falling into a decent cadence here. May I make a recommendation for the next 4 or 5 slides, that we review the slides, allow the board members to talk with their partners, what resonates, what doesn't, do a little elbow partnering, answer question number 7, and then share out for the next ones, kind of fall into that little bit of a pattern.
I think I think Kent was going to add something.
Just a question, just for clarity. So tell me, what's the difference between a focus area and a goal?
So from my perspective, a goal is something that you're tracking, right? That is where you're trying to move the needle in terms of data. The focus area is one of the tactics that you will use to be able to move the needle on that data point. So those are all the things that we are implementing or doing in service of the goal. It's our tactic to get us there.
But that is not telling us what we are trying to achieve. I mean, under growing excellent goals, it's spelled out, by June of 2026, this is what we want to, or would like to see happen. On the focus area, it's telling us what we're doing, but where is the data that is going to show us, what we're going to accomplish or how we're going to accomplish it?
Yep.
So I think that's a really good question. So when we are attacking the literacy rates in our district, the number one thing that we can do is ensure that our teachers have high functioning curriculums. And then how do we know that those curriculums are working? We have to do walkthroughs and coach and give the people the support to utilize those materials. We do have leading indicators. I think what you're asking for are the leading indicators. And we do collect leading indicators to determine whether or not whether or not we're fully implementing and is it working, and comparing those two, whether or not, so that will tell us whether or not we have to change our focus area. Actually, the percent of ninth grade students is actually a leading indicator for what Kent Barnes was talking about, and that's the graduation rate. It's almost a direct correlation. If your ninth graders are doing that, it's almost a direct correlation to your graduation rate. So in each one of those focus areas, there's the same data points and leading indicators that we track internally to determine whether or not we're on track for that lagging indicator. The things on the left are lagging indicators. They're autopsy data. We're looking for the doctor appointment data, and we do have data that goes with each one of those focus areas to collect. Does that answer your question, Kent?
Can I add one more thing to what TJ just said? And I think it's important to remember that these are our high leverage action items, and each of these action items is something that is built into our growing excellence plan that then has smaller tactics with data associated with them that we're tracking at a staff level, right? So, under implementing the high quality curriculum, DSAT every other week during the school year is tracking data in terms of how many walkthroughs did we do? Are they on pace? Are they on schedule? They're looking at all of those data points along the way in terms of how do we implement this with fidelity to the curriculum. We don't necessarily want to bog you guys down in that minutia of those smaller tactics. Rather, we want to get in front of you guys those high leverage actions that we know is going to move the growing excellence data. But you're right, we on the back end as staff absolutely need to be having those tactics and tracking those with data to ensure that we're doing the work, I think is maybe part of the question.
Okay. I mean, you know, when you look at one area, when you're tracking graduation rate, you know, we've already lowered the requirements for graduation. Okay, so I suppose that's going to help graduation rate. Maybe. Maybe. Okay. So I just want to make sure that we're preparing our students to go out in the world and be successful. And yes, this is all good, you know, the strategic focus areas, but I still want to see something after a while that shows us, okay, this is what we accomplished under these strategic focus areas.
So really kind of the build, and maybe that would be helpful at some point to share with the board the DSAT growing excellence plan and the tracking there, because I think that's what you're asking for. I think that's what you're trying to get at, and that's something that we started doing last year as we realized we need to be tracking that better from a district leadership team perspective.
Okay, thank you.
All right, can we go on to the next area, please, Brenda? So this is student supports, maybe also a beige name. We'll work on it. These are the two missing goals that are in our growing excellence plan that are tied to this area. So I'll give you a chance to read those. And then our high leverage strategic focus areas for student supports are implementation of MTSS. We rolled this out in our high schools last year. We're broadening that across the district this year. SEL curriculum implementation. So we have implemented Tier 1 Character Strong curriculum across the district. We're looking at piloting Character Strong Tier 2 in select schools this year. Systematizing Tier 2 interventions and chronic absenteeism response. So if we want to elbow partner it, if you guys want to discuss with your partner kind of everything that we just spoke about with the last school, and then we will come back around and share out suggestions, feedback, input on this one as well. We shall move on. All right. Oh, I don't want to cut off conversation. All right. Feedback on this pillar. Bruce.
I noticed our growing excellence goals are all to remediate something negative. We don't have a growing excellence goal to like move the marker down, like 10% more kids will be taking AP classes, or enrollment in second year foreign language classes will increase, or more kids will be taking calculus. Ooh, not this kid. But just more kids at high school, I believe, tags like voluntary. Okay, so there'll be a 10% increase in the number of kids participating in the talented gifted program at the high school. Because as I say, all are the two items we have here for growing excellence is we're going to get more discipline, which conveys the message that the inmates are running the asylum, and we're going to improve absenteeism, means they're not, because parents aren't getting the kids to school. Well, that's true, okay, but I don't know is that our entire excellence goal? I don't think it should be.
We were sort of on that page also, because in looking at both of them, a lot of kids, a lot of parents stress how disobedient kids are in school, kids hating to be in school for different reasons. This insubordination, it's nice if we had the ability to do so, but all of those things start at home. You need the background from your house. If the parental support was there you're not going to be insubordinate at school. Otherwise, when you come home, you'll deal with me. It wouldn't be there. The absenteeism, get up and go to school. It's not acceptable not to be in school. And it's almost like we're trying to figure out a way to reinvent the wheel to make it attractive for people to come in school and learn. And I think this is really a tough thing to do. I don't know how we would do it without 110% of parental support. We just can't make this happen for behaviors that are already there.
I think I have two thoughts based on your guys' feedback. I think you are both spot on in terms of relooking at our goals through the lens of being aspirational rather than remedial. I think that is an excellent point. I think that also highlights the disconnect of having so many different plans and why we're trying to put them all under one plan. When those goals are developed apart from the work that you guys do as a board, setting your vision and your goals with the superintendent, that's where some of this disconnect lies. So this is really valuable feedback for us to take to DSAT, who are the ones who create some of these goals, right? Because we want to all be pushing in the same direction. And I think we are, but in terms of how are we viewing those goals from an aspirational point of view or from a remedial point of view, I think that's really important feedback for us to hear so that we can be aligned and part of this exercise. So I find that very valuable. To Linda's point, you're absolutely correct. And that's why we've started to we would like to incorporate community engagement as a third strategic pillar, because what you're highlighting is we can't do this alone. And our community needs to come along with us and support us. Our families need to come alongside us and support us. We need to support our families. Our community needs to support our families. Our community needs to support the work of this district. And so I think what you're highlighting is that disconnect where for so long the district has felt the sole burden of moving the needle on some of these things when there are barriers outside of the control of this district. That's why the board formed the Breaking Barriers Committee, right, to address some of those. So I think you guys are absolutely right, and we hope to accomplish some of those in that third community engagement pillar that we're going to get into. Ken.
I want to thank Linda for her comments. I think she's spot on. To me, this is not realistic. We keep pouring more and more tax dollars into these students that are just sometimes total buttheads and stirring up. And this is what turns parents off, and this is why they move out of the district. Now, when you look at implementation of MTSS and Tier 2 interventions, explain to me that that's incorporating kind of some of the same things. So is there a big difference between MTSS and Tier 2 interventions?
Yes. So the multi-tiered system of support does exactly what Bruce says and gets students into interventions. So your whole system should be looking at why aren't kids taking more AP classes and how do we support them? Do they need a study hall? Do they need a time to where they can get the extra help for? It's not just remediation. And so when we go to do this component, the storytelling in here is going to be really critically important. A tier 2 intervention is where you keep track of students that just need a little bit more help. They need to go get a little extra help to get past algebra, to do these things. And there are ways to set those systems up. We started at our high schools. We look at how some of our credit recovery things that we're doing wonderful things to get students the help that they need. Think about our social emotional curriculum implementation. Think about when you're in the grocery store, to go back to what Tammy asked us to do. Kids these days, they don't know how to put their phone down and look up. How many times do you guys hear that? They don't know how to interact. They don't know how to persevere. They don't know how to disagree appropriately. That's what those curriculums are teaching. So one of the things that we notice that our students are really successful when we teach a lesson, hold accountable. So when we talk about this is how we behave in this school, we teach all these lessons, then the teachers move forward, they can hold accountable. We're going to do the same thing with our cell phone policy. We're going to put videos out, we're going to teach, then we're going to hold accountable. And those SEL lessons they're teaching students how to persevere and things like that's the story that can be told. I agree. These things are born from exactly what you're talking about. What are we doing to make our environments healthy and safe? What are we doing to ensure that our kids feel safe in our buildings? And that, so these languages from 2 and 3 are still kind of that hangover from really our days of the Department of Ed being here. So I really like the notion of shifting towards more of an aspirational component of it, and also knowing that these things are really, really important. Every kid needs a little shot in the arm or a boost, and are we tracking that? And so, I think they're critical components to a healthy system. We notice that that component tier 2 is not very strong for us. So that's where we need to focus to get more students back on track to where they are taking their classes. They are able to go out for sports because they're not failing their classes or whatever it may be. Or tier 2 could be that intervention group in an elementary school where a kid just needs a little bit more of a fluency boost to help move them along. And then while those tier 2 interventions are going, there are kids that are in tag reading and excelling at all the components there. That's what MTSS is. I think a lot of us think MTSS is a system where we spend a lot of money helping remediate, and we do that. We do. We have reading interventionists. We have curriculum. So I think that's what you see, Kent, when you do your walkthroughs and reference that. And so I think it's a mixture of both. I think we are trying to be aspirational. I think we do need to tell that story and be able to communicate what each one of these things are. when we focused on, you say all the time, Ken, if you're not there, you can't learn. Our chronic absenteeism is in our district is a problem, and we saw serious wins this year with when we focused on it, which then is going to turn and transfer into kids earning credits, kids having the ability to now get into a sport or graduate. So I like the notion of moving towards more of an aspirational, ensuring that we are focusing on those things. And we should have seen that one coming, Sarah. That's something that our board is constantly telling us to do. So I didn't even think of that. Kent, did that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, I don't want to belabor this one either. I mean, I do think probably these are inadequate measures for the way that we want to go. I again, at the risk of doing something that board members shouldn't, if we're thinking about student supports aspirationally, it's really about providing a safe and supportive environment for all students to achieve their goals. I mean, that's very different than just talking about student supports. And this actually, I think, minimizes our substantial investment in student safety and support. So I think there are ways to create measures that aren't all looking at the downside, but at the upside of this investment also.
Okay, can we move on to the third area, please? So community engagement, this is the new pillar that we would propose adding to the body of work. And if you go to the next page, you will see there's no growing excellence goals attached to this. So this is where we would really value your feedback as a board in terms of what are some of your goals in this area. TJ and I have the conversation a lot that for a long time, this district was operating apart from the community, not as a part of the community. And I think we have turned a page and we are now operating as a part of the community, not apart from it, realizing that if we're going to be successful, it's going to take the work of the entire community, not just us, but we need to build bridges in order for that work to occur. So here are some of the strategic focus areas for this. So the breaking barriers work of the subcommittees. So we have early childhood education, basic needs, and parent and student engagement. Those are the three subgroups of the breaking barriers committee. We have portrait of a graduate implementation, the development of a legislative affairs program, the development of volunteer programming, again, getting our community into our buildings to support the work that's being done, and development of alumni programming as well. As you discuss with your partner, we would be very interested to know from your perspective as a board, we had 5 growing excellence goals that really were attached to those first 2 strategic areas. We would love your input in terms of what are some goals we should be looking at for this area. And then this is a newer body of work. When we think about the other areas, though, that body of work has been on the track for a while, right? We are several years into implementing a lot of those things with a few more years to go. A lot of this work is brand new. And so as we're building this, we want your input in terms of, are these the high leverage action items you guys see that we should be focusing on? Do we need to tweak these? This is one that is much more fresh and probably needs far more input from the board. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to discuss and then would love your feedback.
And Sarah, I have a STEM that may or may not be helpful, so you guys give me a quick sense. But board members and TJ, if you think about it this way, I'm looking at the strategic focus areas. And if I ask myself, if we do the work well in these areas, it will result in what? What's the end, the result we're after? If we do the work well in breaking barriers, or portrait of a graduate implementation, or developing a legislative affairs program, if we do that kind of work well, what are your best hopes? It will result in what? And if you talk with that about your partner, that may help you achieve that kind of aspirational inspirational kind of here's what we're after, the result. Make sense?
I think that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be quiet now.
Uh,
But, if we could, if we could set a goal that, and I would say targeting volunteers in the elementaries. Because, you know, volunteer at the high school, nothing to do. But if we set a goal of volunteers in the elementary school to say we'd have 10 volunteers in every elementary school by the end of the first year. I don't know. I don't know if that's reasonable. I don't know if that's, but that's a number. And if you had 10 in an elementary school, and then the following year you get to 15, maybe get to 20, and then because in elementary you can get somebody in kindergarten and have them for maybe 5 years before they are going to, take off. Um, and I think that could have a real impact, especially when you talk about the reading testing that has to take place, and just reading to kids, having kids read to you, math, all of that sort of stuff. Alumni program, I just see the benefits of an alumni program. And if we ever have to have a bond issue, we got this whole organization of alumni out there, and they're everywhere. I mean, they're absolutely everywhere. We all talk about, oh, all the kids, they all move away. They all move. They're right. They're here. Most of them are here. And I don't know if we'd base an alumni program at the high school, high school alumni for each school, or try to create a, Davenport alumni. I'm not sure. More of the zeal would probably be in the school identified alumni, but you'd want them to at least be blended in a way that they could also do, they want to do stuff for their school, but do big picture stuff for the district.
yeah, our goal is both.
Yeah.
Some high schools do it really well. Central has an amazing alumni program. Other high schools don't really have anything. And so our goal is to create a district wide one, but knowing that there is a certain pride that's attached to your specific alma mater. But at the end of the day, you came from Davenport schools.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yep. Other thoughts?
I was telling Ken back in the late 80s, the big focus was business partners. And every single school had a business partner or two. And I was at Fillmore. We had Iowa American Water Company. Every fun night they were there. They were there if we had any kind of programs. They came in and read with kids and did whatever needs the building had. But I mean, they were attached to us and they were always there. But we got away from that business model. And, you know, the businesses are going to have to buy in because they're going to have to let their employees go during the day to come over. And that never seemed to be a problem, but it was very effective to have, rather than get a volunteer here, there, if you can get a company to buy into this is your building.
Any other thoughts? Ken?
So as far as portrait of graduate, I think there's been a lot of work done there, and I think you guys are well on the way there. So I think that's going well. And we've talked about the legislative affairs with our committee, and again, we're going to follow some of the IASB's recommendations, but then we're also going to have some of our own that we're going to focus on. So I don't know, did you have something in mind else to add to that, TJ? Okay.
No, I think that you're spot on. I really like the path that we're going with our legislative advocacy. Not just a blanket, but getting more strategic. And one of the things as I'm listening to people talk, there could be one of the goals is that every year by August 30th, the legislative advocacy committee brings forth the recommendation to the school board to approve. That would be a good goal every year. We review our data. You can put things in a cadence to where it would be very valuable, because that then we're advocating in August, September, and October while they're actually doing work. And I think that that's been being a little bit more strategic with it is what we're and tactical is what we were thinking with that.
And I like the idea that Karen brought up as far as having business partners for every school. Is there? Do we have somebody on staff that could be maybe focusing on that?
We do, and she has been on the job for 9 hours now.
One day. She started today.
Started today.
Kara Ellenberg is our new community engagement coordinator. And so when we talk about volunteer programming, alumni programming, and I love the business partner idea, that will all fall under her body of work. So she's going to be tasked with coming up and implementing a lot of these programs this year. Yep.
Well, I think that would be critical.
Yeah.
There are tools and strategies that each building can put in place. The power structure. If you don't know your community, you got to go out and you got to interview, find out who's the power structure, and then you have to go ask, and that organically happens. But to put a plan in place to strategically have that be an ask from our buildings, I think would be incredibly powerful.
Just as far as measurable goals, I think it's really difficult for us to say we want you to start at this percentage and get to this percentage. I mean, when I look at those other goals, I imagine we didn't come up with a 21.6%. Those are things that you present to us. So I guess my question would just be, when can we expect an update as far as when we are setting these measurable goals for community involvement and community engagement?
Yeah, we wanted to get your feedback if there was anything specifically that you wanted to track in terms of, are any of these rising to, yep, that's really one of the most important things that we want to track. I do like Bruce's suggestion, especially as we're developing programs. Some of it's just going to be numeric. I don't necessarily think that's the best way to track goals over a long period of time, but I think when you're trying to gain some critical momentum, those are helpful things to track. So we can work on developing some of those and bring them back to you. All right, let's move on to the fourth area then. Effective resource management. If you want to skip to the next slide. Again, this is an area where we don't have any preset defined goals attached to it. Here are our strategic focus areas. So take a minute to look at these, discuss with your partner, and then we will come back for feedback on this one. Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to knock that over. All right. Would love your guys' feedback in terms of, are there any specific goals that you would like us tracking and the strategic focus areas?
I again like this area of focus. I would argue, I think we already have some goals that represent the financial strength and health of this school district. In fact, Kevin, it seems like Kent or Kevin go over those. We can't fall below this. We need to be within this range. And presumably, maybe I'm off on this, but presumably all of those things that he emphasizes are so that we can pay our people, we can attract new talent, and we can invest in our facilities. Mm-hmm. So I think that they're probably already there. We just have to choose the right 3 or 4 financial metrics that allow us to do these things. I long for something that's a little sexier than, great financial management. I mean, our strategic direction here is to invest in our workforce and facilities to compete with any school district across the state. I mean, that's what our aspiration is. That's why we're doing all these things. So I just long for something a little less beige. No offense to anyone who really likes beige. So.
Well, for me, the fourth item there is the most critical of all of these. So again, continuing to use our forecasting tools and that, but again, to the enrollment uncertainty, that's going to dictate where we go right there. The enrollment is number one. And of course, it's important with the staffing patterns and everything too. Phase 1, I think, that's gone well. We're getting towards the end of that. We've started on phase 2, and just getting a good start on that. So I think that whole process has been good, and the way it was rolled out in the beginning to get um, the community involved, I think was highly critical. But again, the enrollment uncertainty, I think, is that's what's going to dictate where our district goes.
I think also we don't hear about it, although Kent and I sometimes do at finance, staffing patterns. I think Jamie's got a great handle on, you know, what staffing we need and where we need it and what needs to be changed. We don't hear it as a board, but in finance, she often will let us know. And so I think that part is under control along with the forecasting of the finances.
I would agree with that. In terms of retaining staff, our retention rates this year again have improved. Jamie tracks all of that. She has a lot of great data that we can pull into goals too. Absolutely. Any other thoughts on this specific area? Okay, so I want to wrap us up with what are our next steps. This was good input. I appreciate you guys hanging with us as we went through these. Again, we have a lot of work that we're doing across the district, and being able to synthesize this all together is very helpful in terms of direction setting and prioritizing the work of the staff. So we appreciate your guys' thoughts and input that you gave us tonight. Based on this, what we will do, we will go back, synthesize all of your feedback, try to get this into a draft document for you guys to review. This was very high level stuff, and so we want to be able to get it into, I'm not saying it's going to look like this, but we want to get it into a digestible format that, again, is easy for you to take to the grocery store, to take to the football game, right? And share with the people that are asking you the questions. Also with our staff too, right? Like, they're ambassadors of this district, just like you guys are ambassadors of this district. We also want to create a regular cadence for communicating progress. I know that we do have board presentations for you guys on a number of these areas, but we do believe that it's important to be tracking the progress of these high leverage action items and regularly reporting them back to the board in a regular cadence. So one of the byproducts of creating a document like this is that it then gives us something to be able to track and report back on in a regular cadence, both for the board, but then also for our internal staff audience and our external community audience. We want to be able to be accountable for this work to you guys, but we also want to be accountable to the community and have the community see the progress that we're making as well. And so we really view this as a tool not only to guide the body of work that our staff is doing, but also as a great communication tool for our community to be able to highlight to them where it is we're going and what we're doing to get there.
TJ and Sarah, this is really good work. I want to make what I hope will be taken as a friendly suggestion. We have invested as a school district millions of dollars in co-curricular and extracurricular facilities, presumably with the ambition of having more students involved, more students participating, and more deeply engaged in those age-appropriate co-curricular and extracurricular activities that are sponsored by the school district. I don't feel or see that in the directions that we've discussed tonight, and at least I think, given the support of the board of the district's master plan, without something that specifically focuses on extracurricular participation and expanding those options and offering the best possible options, not only in our community but in this part of the state, we are missing an opportunity and a potential distinguishing piece of our school district's ambition. So I would love to see a pillar or a connected pillar to either the student academic achievement or the safe and supportive environment, but we're missing sending an important message to our community about our values and what we want our students and community to value. So for what it's worth.
I like it. That's great feedback. Yep. Yep. That is very good feedback. Any other final thoughts? All right. Thank you.
TJ and Sarah, I'm going to put you on the spot. We didn't really talk about this. So much for no surprises, TJ. Thinking about what you've heard tonight from the board, what would each of you identify as a couple of key takeaways as you move forward with your next steps? This was a huge lift, by the way. So
Well, that's a really good question, and that's all I've been doing is writing down. I think tonight was really important to be a good listener. I think it's a it's a point in time in a celebration, because if you look at the goals that the school board had last year, and then the ones that we are setting now, they are going from minimal compliance to aspirational, not being beige. Let's take a look at our AP students. Let's not stop focusing on this. Let's review data. And so to me that was inspiring to me. It doesn't mean we're not going to work on tier 2. Of course we are, but we have to ensure that everyone's taken care of, and we got to talk about that. And so that's what this is, bringing that to life. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think there's enough here we have really, really smart people that are really good at synthesizing, putting things together, and it's going to get us on a cadence that we're going to turn around, and it's going to outlast anybody in the room. And I think that's what's so important to me, because the community has said these things. This is what we do here. We're strategic thinkers. And this is the start of that. Not that we haven't been strategically thinking. Every single one of these plans, Portrait of a Graduate was beautifully done. The long range, like Kent said, the long range facility plan, phase 1, was beautifully done. And we're getting ready to start 2. All those things. Now we're going to be strategic moving forward. And that is so exciting to me. And we have heard the tone from our elected officials. This is what the tone of what this should feel like. And I'm incredibly excited about that. That's a challenge that I think our communication team is going to cascade internally, and we're going to come back with a product, and we're going to keep coming back until our board says that's what we want to be. That's what we're aspiring to be every single day. So that's what I like over here scratching in my notebook that only I can read. That's what's going on over here for me.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what TJ said. To me, the clarity and alignment that comes from a practice of doing something like this, especially when we've had so many other plans hanging out there, I think is incredibly powerful. Clarity and alignment might be a little beige, but it's also incredibly important in terms of moving us to the next step. And TJ and I often talk about the concept of cathedral thinking and building, laying the stones of a cathedral that you may never step into, right? And I view a lot of the work that we are starting to put in place now as we move from compliance to aspirational goals. We may never see the fruit of some of the labor that we're laying the groundwork for, especially in some of these newer areas that we're endeavoring into. And to me, that's really exciting. So we appreciate your input on that.
I think I heard every single board member multiple times offer just great nuggets of feedback. And I just want to say congratulations for y'all just spent a good hour on that and talking through those pieces. And not everybody does that. So you did some incredible work. I would like you to look at page 25. I want you to think about when you are delivered the final product of a plan on the page. So whether it's the sample that Sarah gave you from your friends up north in Dubuque, whether it's whatever you're envisioning in your mind, how it looks in this moment is not what's important. But what I want you to think about is there's 3 questions that are there. When you have that plan on a page, secretly, by the way, I see this as a trifold laminated, and I'm like carrying it in my pocket every time I'm at the grocery store because I'm that nerdy. Whatever the plan on the page looks like, however you're visualizing it, 1, how's it going to be helpful? How will the board use the information? When it's high level, it's on a page or it's on a front and back. Second question, how's it going to be helpful to your community, and how might your community use it? And the third one is for your staff. How will that content be helpful for your staff, and how might they use it? And I'm going to give you a couple minutes. Just jot some notes, and then I'm going to have you talk with your elbow partner. If you're done writing, go ahead and turn to your elbow partner and share your quick thoughts. All right, friends, what'd you get for question number 1? How is this going to be helpful to the board? How might the board use the information?
Well, I will just speak for myself on this one. I answered the same for each of the 3 questions. because this would create alignment of stakeholders and ensure accountability. And that would be the same for the board, our community, as well as any internal audience that is charged with implementing it. So I answered the same thing for each of the three questions.
You're not laminating it and putting it in a trifold and keeping it in your pocket when you go to the grocery store. I'm the only nerdy one. Like, can we get it down to a 5x7 index card? Karen, you were reaching for the mic. Okay.
Basically the same answer for all three. I said it was going to consolidate and focus the variety of plans, programs, and initiatives that we have and provide a clear one pager of what we have done, are doing, and going to do.
Mm-hmm. I can't write fast enough. Kent.
So again, I think for all three, transparency comes into play, but it gives us direction. You get to see the opportunities that are before us, and it also gives the community, the staff, the board, confidence in the plan that you have laid out.
All beautifully stated. Harry, what would you like to add?
Sure helps when I can unmute. Yeah, two comments. One is, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, board teams seldom get to a conversation like you've had tonight, and where themes like, hey, what would this look like if our goals, we were to work them into more aspirational kinds of statements? You'll never get to that as a board soup team unless you set aside time and designate time and value time to have the kind of conversation you've had tonight. So important. It doesn't happen without allocating time. And number two, I watched from whatever, 400 miles away, 500 miles away, board members being thoughtful about not getting way down in the weeds, but also providing your input. And Sarah and TJ, to be able to absorb what the board members are saying to you, not get defensive, not whatever, listen, welcome that input. And I have to tell you, that's an incredible set of qualities on board members and administrative leadership. And it doesn't happen by accident. And you will move to where you want to be because you've allocated time, had important discussions without being defensive, throwing up roadblocks, or bored, getting way down in the weeds. So good for you all.
Beautifully stated, my friend. I have one last favor to ask of you all. You just gave Harry and I don't know, now I lost track of time, 2.5+ hours tonight. What do you want to remember about tonight's work? I'm a big believer in having a check-in. And since I can't just pop out of all of your mailboxes in 30 days, I mean, I could, but they don't make mailboxes like they used to. That was funny. On page 29, it's the very last page of your workbook. I want you to rip that page off, and there's an opportunity to write a quick letter to yourself. What do you want to be reminded of about tonight's work that in 30 days you're going to, this will be a check-in. This is between you and you. I'm going to give you an envelope. You're going to address the envelope to yourself. You're putting your letter in the envelope. You're sealing it. I do not need to read your letter, but I am going to mail it to you. So 30 days from today, do you want to be reminded about your conversation? Do you want to be reminded about something specific somebody said that you want to follow up with? Do you want to be reminded about a commitment to yourself? As a result of tonight's work, what are you committing to do? And I'm going to bring you envelopes.
For a little levity at the end of the night, I have a 6th and 8th grader who have watched this entire meeting online. And my daughter's the one texting me. She says, "Will you wave to the camera?" So, hi, Aubrey. Hi, Madeline. Everybody turn and wave to them.
That should be worth something extra, Mom.
I'm surprised they watched the entire thing. Apparently they did. My husband is
There you go.
I heard an hour's worth of administrators on cell phone calls. So she has thoughts.
It is. Harry and I want to thank you for your time tonight. I often remind districts, I don't live in your district, but the success of your students is really important to me because one, I don't live very far away and we're a part of the same great state. And I want every single one of your students to be successful. I am incredibly grateful for the time that you give in your community. You are all leaders, and it's not an easy task. And I know people don't say thank you very often. So I hope you know how much I personally appreciate all that you do. I know Harry does as well. We are grateful for that. And please let us know what we can do to continue to support you in your very important work. And I'll grab your envelopes.
May I have a motion to adjourn? Second. It's been moved and second. All in favor, say aye. Meeting adjourned.